Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Debo's Den. Today I'm actually going to be talking about a question that, lots of people actually ask me. So several people come and say, hey Debo, you run Get Funded Africa. Can you tell me how to raise money? And of course, the answer I usually provide is, well, I can tell you how to raise money, but to do that, you need to do some homework. And now this homework essentially is writing a pitch deck. So yes, today I'm going to be talking about how to develop a pitch deck. But before I do that, I'd love you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Debo's Den. Click the button down below, as well as hit the bell button. So that way, whenever a new episode of Debo's Den comes up, you're actually going to be notified about the episode. So stay tuned and let's talk about how to write a pitch deck. Hi there, welcome back. And so as I said, I'm going to be talking about how to develop a pitch deck. Now, I should say that before talking about developing pitch decks and all, it's important to note that there are actually no hard and fast rules. Pitch deck development is different from company to company. However, today I'll be using as a reference a pitch deck developed by Get Funded Africa in our own fundraising round. So general rules, general rules for pitch deck development. One is that there are no rules, okay? So different things go pretty much as long as your story is well told. Now, a pitch deck is usually used by an investor to decide if they want to have additional conversations with the startup. Now, note this, many investors, out there don't necessarily have the time to sit down and talk to startups. So what do? They ask startups to tell their story, literally the pitch deck, and share with them. And then when, they take a look at the pitch deck, they can then decide if this is a company that they want to have additional conversations with. So essentially, because in a pitch deck you're telling your story, one of the things you want to do is to make sure that the slides are not, too long. So typically it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation or a PDF document, and that presentation should probably be between 10 and 15 slides long. As I said, there are no rules, but generally speaking, it makes sense to have it long enough to be able to tell your story, but short enough for someone to be able to quickly glance and understand what your pitch deck is about. So I think tip one, no rules in creating a pitch deck. Now let's start with the pitch deck itself. So the very first thing, using Get Funded Africa's example, as I said, is to state what the problem is. So some people call this the problem statement. Now the problem statement is like the early part, maybe just one slide is enough to really explain what the problem is. What is it that, the company has seen, or you as the founder have seen as an opportunity in the market? What is missing? So in Get Funded Africa, for example, we started off by actually talking about the challenges that startups have. Now remember, Get Funded Africa is a platform that solves the problems that startups face, financing or fundraising being one of them. So we actually started our first slide, as you can see on your screen. Our first slide talked about the challenges that African startups faced. And so this, invariably, in pictorial form, was our own problem statement. Challenges related to fundraising, challenges related to business know-how, challenges related to mentorship and exposure, challenges related to telling African stories. So this was ours. For some other people, it's usually maybe like a text that summarizes, what those companies see as a problem. And that, my friends, is the problem statement. Hi there. So at this moment, I actually want to address, the next thing that should actually be on your pitch deck. It should be about the market size. Now, in our own pitch deck, when we talked about the market size, we kind of like stated market size in terms of number of startups and in terms of the value of that activity based on the numbers from the World Bank IFC. In your particular case, depending on what it is that you're doing, you want to make sure that in your market size, I like to say the rule of three, right? In the rule of three, essentially, you're saying that you're trying to estimate the total addressable market. That's what's the size of that problem that you have actually stated. How big is that problem that you see? And then there's also then the, what I'll call the serviceable available market, which essentially is what percentage of that market or what portion of that market can you actually acquire. And then finally, it's now the market that you think realistically you can actually capture based on your business. So basically, you want to talk about the market size so that the investor knows that this thing, not only can you do it now, you can actually scale and grow in a whole big way or bigger way that they expect. Remember, the investor is investing not only in your business today, but in your business tomorrow. So you need to make sure that you can show the size of that market in your pitch deck. And so thereafter, one of the things you want to be able to show is actually your solution. So you've said you've identified that there is a problem. You've also said that this problem is yay big. So it's now thereafter, if you've identified what the problem is, then the next thing should actually be the solution, right? Now, reality is the solution is going to be what you do to actually address that market. In many ways, the solution is kind of like a summary of your product. What product are you actually bringing out there to solve the problem that you've assessed or estimated the size of the market? So that is a key point that you need to show. So how does your product actually solve this problem? How is your product different from others? How unique is your product? These are things that you need to bring out there on a solutions page. Now, the next thing you need to actually show is traction. Now, traction is a double-edged sword in a way. Now, investors want to invest in companies that have shown that they can actually grow and have shown that people can actually buy these things. Now, what happens if, on the other hand, you're only just starting your company, right? How do you show traction? And that's the word. How do you show that your business is viable? How do you show that it can grow? How do you show that customers actually like this thing? So to show traction, this depends on the stage that your business is in. If yours is simply just an idea stage, you have an idea and you're putting down your ideas together on a pitch deck, one of the things that you can actually show is maybe that people have registered to subscribe for what you're doing. They're not yet paying customers, but at least you can show investors that people have indicated interest in that idea or product or service. On the other hand, if you're a later stage company, you've already established your business, you are already doing certain things, one of the things you can show in terms of traction is maybe like the revenue that you have achieved. It may end up being, things like the number of subscribers you have, or the number of customers, or the percentage of your market that you can acquire has actually been achieved. So traction is very important because this tells the investor that your business is viable, that people are willing to pay for it, and that they can take a chance on you. That's traction. The next thing you want to be able to do or put into your pitch deck is your go-to-market. So your go-to-market, or some people would say go-to-market strategy, is really more around what is it that you need to do or show in your pitch deck that you can actually take your product to customers and people can actually buy. Now, in Get Funded Africa's own pitch deck, when we did our pre-seed, right, we had already launched, we had actually already shown traction. So we didn't really state a go-to-market, but what we did instead was to show that this was how we have formed partnerships with different companies. And this then pretty much stood in as a go-to-market. But generally speaking, especially if you're just starting and all, you need to be able to show to the investors that this is your plan to actually take your product, whatever it is, or even service, into the market. So hence the word no-brainer, go to market. Now, investors also want to know about your competition. So they want to know that, okay, you say you have this, you've identified this problem, and you have something unique that people want. So another thing they want to know is, who is your competition? Who are the people that you're going to be competing against? Now, the competition is important because you might enter into a sector that, say, for example, threatens an existing big player. So there's nothing wrong with disruption, right? But it then becomes, you have to make sure, especially from an investor's point of view, they want to make sure that they know who you're competing against, just in case there's even conflict of interest anyways. And in addition to that, they also want to know, how do they even measure your organization vis-a-vis other organizations that are doing well? So your competition usually is just maybe one slide. And you can write it in different ways. Some people, in our case, what we did was just to kind of like set up a tick box in terms of comparing what we do vis-a-vis some of the other companies that are also in our industry or in a similar line as us. So this is what you need to note when you're developing a pitch deck. The competition page needs to show what you are good at, and really, if you can, show what you're good at vis-a-vis some of the other people in the industry. The next thing you want to be able to show is your team. The team cannot be emphasized enough. Now, here's the thing. Let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. Ideas are 2 for 10p. Ideas are 2 for 5 cents, right? There are hundreds, millions of ideas out there that have hit the graveyard. The reality is that having the idea is one thing, and it's a very important step. But beyond the idea, the ability to execute then becomes very, very, very strategic and important. And this is what investors are always on the lookout for. So your team, particularly the co-founders or the founder, then becomes important, i.e., who does what in the organization? Does the CEO have the requisite experience in terms of product design, in terms of fundraising and things like that? Who actually helps with operations? Who is in charge of the different products that you have identified to actually solve this problem? So these are some of the things that you need to be able to show. Now, some people, so that it's not too complicated, just have like very short slides, a picture of the CEO, a picture of the COO, and that's it. As much as possible, if you can, put in pictures of the management team as well as the advisors, as it may be. For us at GFA, what we did in our team slide was we actually put in some of the people that were working on the different products as well as advisors. So we put them together on one slide so that people have an idea of who does what in our organization. People do it differently. So as I just mentioned, some just put in the picture of the CEO or the founder and that's it. And then have a long talk about what the CEO does. But you put in a slide about the team because those are the people that are going to execute your goals, your objective, and show to the investors that your business can grow and execute. Now, something that I always encourage that you put in your pitch deck, if you have it, note, if you have it, and please do not lie or form something that does not exist, is around publicity or awards or recognition that your company or your product has actually achieved. Here's why it's important. To an investor, if you have won an award for what you're doing, then it shows that what you're doing, service or product, is recognized in the market. And so they're willing to take a chance on you. Or maybe your company or your product has been mentioned in the media. For example, maybe Get Funded Africa News, our own media structure. Please, this is a shameless plug. And if you've watched Debo's Den in the last few episodes, you know I do this without shame. Please visit media.getfundedafrica.com. Would love to hear your feedback. And please do visit and get the latest news and the trends on African startups and things that are happening in the investment landscape and investment ecosystem in Africa. Okay, shameless plug over, and then back, of course, to press and publicity. So if you have mentions, so whether it's Get Funded Africa News, whether it's CNN, whether it is, BBC or whatever, it's always nice to put that in your deck to show that you as a founder or the product itself has actually hit the market and people like or know about it. So this is always a useful thing if you have it. The next thing, and this is very important, is your financial projections. Now, as I said in the very beginning, the investors want to know that you have something that is scalable. And so there's a big market for it. You can acquire a certain portion of it and you can actually grow because there's a lot of room for growth. So your financials, whether historical or even forecast, becomes very important in presenting your company's story from a financial point of view. Many people, especially investors, remember that the pitch deck is not for you to tell everything about your organization. It's to be able to tell some of the things. So one slide on your financials usually should be enough. If the investor does want to invest in your company or they want to know more, they will reach out and actually ask for more information. So one slide on your financials that shows your projections into the future, if possible, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, the further the better, that becomes useful in your pitch deck. And finally, your funding ask. By this, I mean, put in the slides how much you actually want the investor to invest in your business. Or put simply, if it's more than one investor, how much are you trying to fundraise? So are you trying to raise $500,000? Are you trying to raise $1 million? Are you trying to raise $10 million? Whatever the amount is, put in there that this is what we're trying to raise. And if possible, if you've done your financial modeling right, by the way, if you haven't done your financial modeling, please reach out to Get Funded Africa. But you can also put in the valuation or the estimate at which, the value that you think your business is and how much you want to raise, what percentage of that company's value do you want to raise. In your fundraising ask, you can also put in a slide that then says, this and this is what you want to use the funds for. So in GFA, what we did was we had one slide summarizing what we want to use the funds for across board, for people, for research and development, on the media side, etc. For you, it's as you like it. So please don't forget, you've done all of this work and showed that I am a viable business. And so the next thing, of course, is then this is what I am asking for. And don't be shy. I see this from many people. They would have said, okay, we're fundraising, and then they don't even put how much they're trying to raise. I saw that and I was like, how'd that happen? But essentially, please do not forget, put your fundraising ask and what you're going to do with the funds in the slides. And that's a wrap, everyone. So now you know how to develop your own pitch deck. Please feel free to reach out to Get Funded Africa's team. So whatever it is, startups@getfundedafrica.com. We actually have a team that can help you develop your pitch deck. But even if you don't, I hope that this has been useful to you in giving you the tips to develop and, get your own startup out there in front of investors. All the very best in your fundraising. And if you haven't started, please develop your pitch deck. I'd love to hear your story. Please send an email to us, debosden@getfundedafrica.com. All the very best. Bye for now.